Hello and welcome to the Human Resource. My name is Pandy Pridemore, and I want to thank you for joining us today. You know, it's July, the 1st of July here in 2024, and I cannot believe how many changes we have already seen this year in 2024. It's just blowing my mind how fast things are moving within human resources. And so I decided maybe we got to just kind of do a recap for some of you who have been so busy that maybe some things are slipping between the cracks. Maybe you haven't had a chance to research or ask any questions about them. I just did a presentation this morning for a large group of people who, all sorts of industries. I mean, it was actually an employee benefits group who asked me to just come in and give a recap so that their clients could have a better understanding of just what's going on and what they should be doing to try to stay compliant. So for you, I'm going to kind of do a summary here so that you can kind of make a list and make sure that you yourself are caught up with everything. And we're going to talk federal. We're not going to talk state. The states they're moving very fast as well, but this is all federal law. And we're going to start with the mothership. We're going to start with the Department of Labor. I'm sure somewhere and somehow you've been listening to the fact that the threshold for determining exempt and non-exempt status just recently changed here on July 1st. It did not change the criteria to meet the classifications except in the salary portion. We went from $35,000 up here on July 1st to $43,888. Now, this is really confusing a lot of people, and you've got to be really careful about this. If you have not evaluated where your individuals are from a compensation level, you need to be doing that immediately, because not only did it change for July 1st, but again in January 1 of this coming year, 2025, that threshold is going to change again, and it's going to move up to $58,656. That's huge. That's huge. And the challenges for you are enormous because now remember, non-exempt people have to record all working hours. They don't get to just come and go as they please. They have to be paid for actual hours worked. You may have individuals that on an exempt basis were never really working 40 hours because we never put them on a timekeeping system. They never clocked in and out. Maybe they've only been working 30 hours. And if that's the case, now you've got to be looking at these individuals and determining, are they still even eligible for some of your benefits? Go back to your handbook. Do you have the full-time status is 40 hours or more for a non-exempt worker? And if that's so, are only full-time employees eligible for paid holidays, for bereavement? You've got to be looking at this stuff. You also have to be thinking hard about what are we requiring them to suffer and what are we permitting? Because if you're going to have to convert their negotiated rate to an hourly rate, you're also going to be calculating what that overtime looks like. And you may not be willing to pay overtime at some of those hourly rates. So please get with your consultant, get with your labor law attorney. You can call us here at the Human Resource USA, and we will walk you through how to make those conversions and what impacts this might have on your company. But then again, Wage and Hour also here in January sent out the new regs for the distinction between 1099 and W-2. This, again, people have been watching it. There's a lot of people out there who still are fighting this whole 1099 conversation. But let me remind you, it is not up to the worker to determine if they are a valid 1099 versus a W-2. It is this status, this guidance right here today. And you have to explain to them and help them understand how much risk you want to take just so they can have the, I don't know, the privilege of saying they're a independent contractor or that they're in their own business. Because ultimately, you're going to have to pay the back taxes. You're going to have to pay the fines. You're going to have to pay the fees. You're going to have to go back and pay the workers' comp. You're going to have to back up that 401k that they didn't get into, or the health insurance that they didn't get into. It's monumental, and they'll go back 3 years. The IRS, the Department of Labor, they will go back 3 years and even interview individuals that don't even work for you anymore. So definitely take a look at your 1099s if you still have them and make sure that they are valid 1099s. How about the EEOC? The final ruling for the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act came out in May. Remember that if you have not been educated on that particular legislation, please understand that there are very definite differences. Don't think that just because you may offer the Americans with Disabilities Act that you have everything covered, because it is completely different. I had to read these regs and highlight and explain to clients. It introduces a new term called limitation. So a limitation is different than a disability. We're working with a 40-week period, which is the gestation time for a typical childbirth. We're also not required or cannot require medical certifications in many cases within the PWFA protections. So definitely brush yourself up, because the pregnant worker is by far the most protected person in the workplace now. In April, we also had the EEOC introduce their workplace harassment guidance. Now, this didn't surprise a lot of us, but then on the other hand, when it came to a couple of these situations, we looked at each other and said, my gosh, it's taken them 10 years. 10 years the EEOC's been dragging their feet on some of this legislation. There's over 400 pages in the guidance. I've been trying to bring some of that to you. Last week's show was on the definitions of pervasive and severe, which came straight from this particular guidance. So there's a lot of stuff in this. But what you really want to focus on is new indicators for workplace harassment include intentional misuse of pronouns and names inconsistent with an employee's gender identity. Number 2, denial of access to a bathroom facility consistent with the employee's gender identity. That's the one we've been waiting on for 10 years. Number 3, disclosing an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity without their permission. Be careful about this one. Number 4, insulting, criticizing, or demeaning behavior towards a person based on their pregnancy or pregnancy-related medical conditions such as lactation or morning sickness. And basically what this is saying is, if you've got employees out there that are cracking jokes, that are harassing some of your pregnant workers, they're leading you down the path of a hostile workplace. So jump on that stuff quickly. And the 5th new point is insulting, criticizing, demeaning, or changing work conditions of an employee based on their decisions to use contraception, including abortion. No, I did not expect this stuff 20 years ago, but it's here. And the EEOC is going to stand by it. So please brush yourself up on that one. And again, there's more to come. OSHA jumped in, and I'm not a big safety person in terms of knowledge or expertise. OSHA is so big and so broad, but just be reminded, you don't have to be a manufacturer or construction worker to have OSHA as a partner. OSHA oversees everyone in terms of employment and businesses. They finalized 2 new guidances, one in April being their final rule clarifying the rights of employees to designate a non-employee representative to be present during an OSHA workplace inspection. It sounded easy, but what this does is it opens the door for union representation to walk through a safety inspection. And that's never been allowed. It always had to be somebody within the company. But now if they open it up and an employee can say, I'm just done, I don't feel this place is safe, or a union representative comes to an employee and says, hey, have you looked at this? Have you checked that? Have you reviewed this? If it's unsafe, I can come in there and I can help you with that. It's going to be permitted. So my word of advice is you need to get a hold of this particular legislation, read it over well, get with your safety officers, and teach and talk with your team and make sure that they're coming to you before they go to OSHA. Make sure that you're doing everything possible so that you don't have to worry about an inspection. The other final guidance came out in May, and this was on hazard communication. It was released and becomes effective July 20th of this year, but with staggered compliance dates forthcoming. Employers generally have 6 months beyond those dates to update labeling and HAZCOM programs and to provide additional employee training for newly identified hazards. Guys, remember, I'm just giving you a brief overview. If your organization works with hazardous materials at all, again, do your investigation or call your labor law attorney, your safety TPA, and have them walk you through how this is going to impact you. The Department of Labor also found the following to be areas of concern when applying AI to employment decisions. Now, I thought this was really interesting because more and more I'm starting to see even some of the states pull in and rein in the use of AI in employment decisions. So the Department of Labor jumped in and said, look, if you've got systems or programs using AI that affect these particular activities, you could be applying biases or restrictions and confinements and prohibiting equal employment to all people. So listen carefully. Hours worked. So that means your timekeeping system, your payroll system, break time, waiting time, again, payroll systems, project management systems, work performed at multiple locations, calculating wage rates, determining the Family Medical Leave Act, processing requests and certifications, any kind of interference of processing that paperwork and providing approvals for FMLA, scheduling breaks for nursing mothers, the Employee Polygraph Protection Act, if it has any involvement with that, it could be showing bias and could be an illegal act. Retaliation, discipline decisions, workplace surveillance. AI has no place in some of that, guys. In fact, I'm wondering if AI has any place at all in most of this. And how about discriminating candidates with disabilities? That's your applicant tracking system. Please be cautious. I know that many of you are using these HRI systems, these additional systems, but they weren't prepared. They just weren't prepared for all the protections that are now in place. We could talk about the Federal Trade Commission and the elimination of non-competes. Please be very cautious with this. Texas, at this time here on July 10th, Texas is still the only state that has appealed the elimination of non-competes. So if you're talking to a Texas candidate who has a non-compete, that's still in place. But as of right now, none of the other states are bulking this. They're not fighting back. So non-competes may be a thing of the past. National Labor Relations Board, they want to come in and evaluate the terms respect and insubordination. This is a huge change when it comes to your policies, your disciplinary actions, your terminations, your reasons for termination. How about retaliation? And what they're basically saying is, if you've got somebody who is expressing themselves in a frustrating way or non-professional, disrespectful way around those three topics, remember there's three topics that are protected by the National Labor Relations Board. One is compensation, one is work conditions, the other is terms of employment. If someone were to come in and just go off on you what we used to consider insubordination about one of those three topics, we cannot terminate them. You cannot discipline them. They are permitted and protected under the National Labor Relations Board or National Labor Relations Act, Section 7 and 8. Now, if somebody's disrespectful about any other topic, and it can lead into workplace violence, workplace harassment, they're just not being appropriate, yes, we can address that. Absolutely, we can address that. The three protected categories, we need to pull that individual in, calm them down, try to eliminate the emotion in the conversation, and get to the heart of how we can help them satisfy their concerns. The other individuals who just decide they're going to be bullies or emotional children and not act appropriately in the workplace, yeah, we can put those on disciplinary action. But go back to your handbooks, go back to your discipline procedures, go back to how you're making decisions to terminate, and definitely tell your supervisors not to retaliate. Please, if someone does go off and just demonstrate insubordination or calls them a bad name because they're frustrated because somebody got an increase and they didn't, you've got to be really careful with this stuff. It's a difficult topic. And when we think about all these things that have changed, I haven't even mentioned the Supreme Court's overturning Chevron, have I? No, I did not. I will, though. Isn't this enough, though, for right now? Chevron may have overturned, but it doesn't change any of what I just talked about. Not yet. It'll be up to the courts to determine if all of this, what I just talked about, goes away or whether it stays. And if it does, well, okay, we'll work through it, and we'll work through it together. Just want to mention, too, though, that if any of you have any speaking engagements or any events that you would like us to come in and speak at or stop by and represent any of the topics or concerns that you may have, please, all you have to do is let us know. Send me an email at the Human Resource USA or here at the station at ICRC-TV in Cincinnati, and we'll try to get you on the calendar. We enjoy what we do, and we want to work with you as much as we can. Hope to see you next week. Take care.